Hey there, it's Krystal Everdeen, and today I'm going to show you how to crochet a V-neck sweater. So if you've seen any of my other sweater tutorials, you'll actually notice that all the steps are pretty much the same except for one. I've actually even used the same footage from my previous sweater tutorial just because the steps are nearly identical. So if you are able to follow along with those, you're going to do great. But if you are new to my channel, this is the first sweater tutorial that you have seen, then I also think that you're going to do great. I have all the steps here as well. And I would say that this is beginner friendly / intermediate friendly at the most. It's nothing advanced. And I also wanted to say, if you are new here or new to crochet, I do have a crocheting for beginners video, and I'm a self-taught crocheter, and I do crochet differently than a typical crocheter, so you may see some differences in the verbiage I use or my strategy, so just a heads up there. Alrighty then, let's get started. This project I use size 4 yarn from the brand Red Heart, and it is the Super Saver Jumbo. I actually don't know how many yards this has, but it is the Super Saver Jumbo. And I'm also using a size 5mm hook. And the first thing that I'm going to do is grab my yarn and make a slip knot. After I make my slip knot, I'm going to chain a chain that is long enough to cover from one side of my ribs to the other. And if you don't really know what that means, it's basically a chain that is long enough to cover from this side of your ribs all the way across to this side. Yay. So after you have chained a chain that is that long, then you're going to go back on that chain using a triple crochet. So what I do for triple crochet is yarn over through the stitch, yarn over again, back through the stitch, and then you're left with 3 loops. You're going to yarn over, go through the first loop only, then yarn over again, go through 2 loops, then yarn over one last time and go through the last 2 loops. And that's my triple crochet. I don't know if it's actual triple crochet because I always get confused, but that's what I'm going to refer to as triple crochet for the entirety of the video. Okay, so again, yarn over through the stitch, yarn over back through the stitch, yarn over through 1 loop, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. And if you're wondering how in the world is she making crochet tutorials without knowing if this stitch is actually triple crochet, well, it's because I am a self-taught crocheter and my brain works differently, and I never had to or nor had the interest of learning crochet, I guess the quote-unquote proper way. So my technique, my tutorials are a bit different, but hopefully you're still able to follow along. So you're just going to continue making these triple crochets all along your chain until you reach the very end. And again, it is yarn over through the stitch, yarn over back through the stitch, yarn over through 1 loop, yarn over through 2 loops, yarn over through the last 2 loops. And you're just going to go keep doing that until you reach the end. And once you reach the end, it should look something like this. So now I'm going to show you what I do once I approach the end of each row. So these are my last 2 stitches. Well, this is my last stitch. I'm going to go into the very last stitch, make a triple crochet as I normally would, but after I'm done, I'm going to chain 1, flip the project over, chain 1 again, and then create my next row of triple crochet on top of the previous row of triple crochet. So I'm just going to go into this first stitch right here and create my very first triple crochet of the row. And there you go. And if you're wondering why do you do 2 chains at the end of each row, it's to keep the ends of the row even, otherwise it's going to be really wonky and not even, uneven. So make sure that you make those 2 chains. You don't have to chain 1 and then flip it over and then chain another one. You could just chain 2 whenever you want before you start your next row. I don't know why I work that way, but that's just what I do. Okay, and then that's it. After you have done what you need to do at the end of each row, then you just continue making triple crochets on top of the previous row of triple crochets for the rest of the row until you reach the very end. And once you reach the very end, you're pretty much going to do the exact same thing, but just for good measure, I'm just going to show you again what I do at the end. Okay, so your project should look something like this once you've completed the second row of triple crochet. So again, I am at the end of the row. I'm going to make sure that I go into the very last stitch. That way my project ends are nice and even. Make my last triple crochet. Then I'm going to chain one, flip it over, chain one, and then begin my next row of triple crochet on top of the previous row of triple crochet, and it's just going to go on and on like this until your project grows bigger and bigger. So again, the 2 chains at the end of the row are very important, as well as making sure that you go into the very last stitch of every single row. Otherwise your ends are not going to be even. You see how it's nice and square? It's not going to look like that if you skip the last stitch or if you don't chain 2 at the end of each row. So just continue with that pattern until your project grows larger and larger by making a bunch of rows, because you need to make this project big enough so that when you put it against your body, which is going to be from where you want the v-neck to start and where you want it to end. For me, I want the v-neck to start from the middle of my chest area and end at my hips, so it's a full-on sweater. If you want it to be a crop top, then it could start from, say, the middle of your chest to your belly button, and so on and so forth. The length of this piece of the project is completely up to you. So again, mine starts when I put it against my body. It covers from the middle of my chest all the way down to my hips. So since I'm done with this portion of the project, I'm going to move on to the second step, which is creating the V-shape. So all you have to do to create the V-shape is from here, you choose one side and you indicate from what point to what point you want the rest of the coverage to go to, which is basically the middle stitch all the way to one end. So you're only going to work from the middle stitch all the way to one end first. You're going to pretty much forget about the rest of the project and you're only going to work in this one little section. And on top of that, we're going to start decreasing. And I know that's a lot of information at once, so let me show you as I go along. Okay, so I have made a row of triple crochet going from one end of the project to the middle of the project, and once I've completed that, I flipped the project over and started a second row on top of that one row that I just made. And I'm going to start it off like normal. I'm going to go into the first stitch, make sure I chain 2, but the only difference is I'm actually going to skip the second stitch and go straight into the third stitch, and that is called decreasing because you're decreasing the number of stitches in the row. So after you skip that stitch, you're going to see that the project is going to start pulling inward like this, and that's exactly what you want because you want to make that V shape. You don't want it to just be a square, you want it to kind of, go up and be a V. So you're only going to do that to one side, of course, because you don't want both sides of your sweater to go inward. So just when you approach the middle section of the project, then you're going to do this. However, I found that you probably should not do this for every single row because it's going to look funny and it's also going to go in too fast. What I did is I decreased every other row, that way the V shape will form slower and you can make this portion much larger and not be so dramatic of a change. However, if you do want to be a dramatic change, then you could skip a stitch every single row, and if you like the way that it looks, then that's great. If you want it to decrease even slower, then you can skip one stitch every 2 rows or every 3 rows. It's completely up to you. But for me, for this project, if you like the way that mine turned out, I decreased every other row. So I'm finishing up the second row here. I'm approaching the end of the project, and once I reach the end of this project here, the very end, I'm going to make sure that I absolutely do not skip anything. I still chain 2 at the end, flip it over, and then I continue on the rest of the row towards the middle. And of course, while I'm going towards the middle, I do not skip anything because I do not want this side to decrease. I only want this side to decrease, only the middle portion. So I made a full row going into all of the stitches here, and now I'm approaching the end of this new row that is facing the middle. Now, like I said, I did not decrease every row, so for this row, since I decreased in the previous row, I'm going to go into all of the stitches now. And after I complete that row, I'm going to go towards the end of the project again, and then I'm going to chain 2, flip it over, and then head back towards the middle. And then once I reach the middle portion, I'm going to chain 2, flip it over, go into the first stitch, and then skip over that second stitch, and then continue on with my row. And that's the pattern I use. Just keep going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and little by little the project will go inward only on one side, making that V shape. Now once you've completed that, it's time to go over to the other side and do the exact same thing. Now you may think that this V is way too long. Like, that is a very deep V-neck. But there's actually just the bottom portion that's going to actually serve as a V-neck, and then the top portion of this is going to serve as the area that wraps around your trap or your shoulder. So that's why you gotta make it extra long. So when you put this against your body, this portion covers your hip all the way up to the middle of your chest. And then this is the V portion from right here, and then up here is going to be the part that wraps around your trap or your shoulder. So now I'm going to go down here and then go across here and then do the exact same thing I did on the first side to this side. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Now I am actually going to single crochet my way down there. And you can skip this step and simply cut the yarn from the yarn ball and then reattach it to the other side. But I don't know, I have a weird thing about cutting the yarn from the yarn ball too many times in one project. So I try to do it as least times as possible. So this is one of the things that I do. So I'm just going to single crochet my way down there, going into the nearest possible stitch that I can go to. I try not to skip too much space in between each stitch when I'm doing something like this, because then the project will kind of crinkle together. So if you're going to do this, I would suggest that you keep all the stitches really close. And once I reach the bottom, then I'm going to start again with the triple crochets, and this is going to serve as my first row. So for this side, I'm starting from the middle and then going towards the end of the project. But I'm still going to do the exact same thing that I did on the other side. Super duper easy. Now I understand that it is a little bit difficult to follow when you can't really see the whole project. So I'm actually going to include some photos and some more descriptions in my blog post on how to make this V-neck sweater. That hopefully it will be helpful and more clear to you guys. So again, I made my first row starting from the middle, and now I'm at the end, and I'm not going to skip anything, of course. So for this next row, I'm also going to go into all the stitches, but then once I reach the middle, chain 2, flip it over, go into the first stitch. I'm going to skip over that second stitch and then go towards the end, and then, continue with that pattern all the way up until both sides are even. And it should look something like this once you're done. So once I've completed the front side of the sweater, now I'm going to move on to the back side of the sweater, which is even easier because you don't have to worry about making the V shape. All the back side is a giant rectangle. Well, for the most part. I mean, there is a little bit of something you need to do, but it's not something that's any more difficult than this. So once you have completed your square, which is going to cover pretty much all of your back, in comparison to the first part of the project, it should be around here. So a little above where your V-neck is going to end. But this back portion of the sweater should cover all of your back. So just put on your back and make sure that it covers all of it. Now the only thing that we need to make are the things that are going to cover your traps. Pretty much the things that are going to connect to this portion of the front. And all it is two sections that you're going to focus on, pretty much doing the same thing that you did on the first side, just two little rectangles. And again, I know that's like so difficult to explain for me and kind of difficult for you to understand because I'm not doing a great job explaining it. But again, there will be pictures in my blog post, which will be linked in the description box below. And also, I'm just going to show you how it looks like right here. So these little portions of the sweater that you're going to make, essentially the same thing that we did for the first part of the project to make the v-neck. However, this is only going to be square, and the size of it is going to be the area in between your neck and your shoulder. So put the project on your back and align it to your neck and your shoulder, measure out how long that is, and then make the row accordingly. And then you're just going to make a couple rows just on that area. And you're not going to skip any stitches at all because you want this to be rectangular and not a V shape. So I made 5 rows of this because that's how many I needed, but you can make as many as you need for your size sweater. So again, all you have to do is make these rectangular pieces on this portion of the back side of the project. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did last time. I'm going to crochet my way across the project to the other side and do the exact same thing on the other side. So once you're done with that, your project should look a little something like this. It is a really weird shape, and that's why I was having such a hard time explaining it to you. But basically, you're going to make these 2 little rectangular pieces that stick out of the rest of the project, and that's going to serve as the portion that wraps around your shoulder / your traps / your collarbone, I guess, that area. Okay, so you have your front side, you have your back side, and now you have to make the sleeves, which is really easy to do. Okay, in order to make the sleeves, you're going to basically make another big rectangle like you have before, except instead of chaining a chain that's long enough to cover from one side of your ribs to the other, you're going to chain a chain that's long enough to cover from your wrist to your shoulder, and that's going to be your sleeve. So after you have chained a chain that's long enough to cover from your wrist to your shoulder, then you're going to go back on that chain using a triple crochet, and you're just going to continue making rows and rows of triple crochet until you have made a project that is large enough so that when you place your hand inside and you wrap it around your arm, then it covers you comfortably and completely. And yeah, so it's totally up to you if you want a tight sleeve or if you want a very loose and chunky sleeve. The number of rows you crochet will depend on that preference. So here I'm done with my sleeve, and it is the size that I would like it to be. So now I'm going to attach the sides so it could actually be a sleeve instead of a rectangular project. And the first thing I'm going to do is align everything so it's nice and even, and then I'm going to put my hook through one side, then the opposite side, and attach it with a slip stitch. Very easy, and I'm just going to continue attaching both the sides together using a slip stitch and going all the way down the sleeve. And once I've attached both sides together all the way down the project, then I'm going to detach the yarn from the yarn ball, and guess what? I gotta do the second sleeve. So do the same thing all over again. And once you've created both of your sleeves, you're going to grab your torso part of the project, as well as the back side of your project, and now it's time to attach everything, which is pretty simple. All you have to do is grab all your pieces. I'm going to take the front side and the back side and align this portion of both of them together, and I'm going to put my hook through one side, which is the back portion, because that's the last project that I worked on and it's still attached to the yarn ball, not including the sleeves. But anyway, so just put your hook through one side, and then you're going to grab the other side, align them together, and attach them using a slip stitch. And all a slip stitch is putting your hook through the stitch, wrapping your yarn around the hook, and then bringing it through all the loops. And that's it, nice and attached. So you're just going to make sure that everything is nice and aligned, and go through every single stitch, making sure that each slip stitch is not too tight, because then there's not really enough space for your sweater to stretch and move around, and you're going to feel really stiff. So try to make these slip stitches rather loose. I mean, it doesn't have to be like super loose, but also not too tight. Hard to explain if I'm not physically there with you, but just keep in mind not to make them too tight, because you want it to be at least a little bit stretchy, because you want to move around comfortably. So once I've attached this portion of the top, I'm going to move on to the sleeves. It looks like I kept this part open, so I'm just going to put my hook through that loop and then bring the excess yarn through. Okay, so now it's nice and attached. So the back part and the front part on one side are attached, and now I'm going to grab a sleeve and attach it to the top right here. And the sleeves are a little bit more difficult to attach, because you have to keep in mind that the sleeve needs to be attached only on one side, and then also it needs to be attached on one side of the sleeve. So you need to always be sure that you're not accidentally attaching one side of the sleeve to either both the front and the back, or you're attaching both sides of the sleeve to one portion. And I know, again, that's really confusing, but hopefully if you see what I'm doing, then it is more clear. So again, same way, you're going to go through one side of the project, which this is, say, the back side of the project, and then go through the part of the sleeve that you wanted to attach to that part of the project, and then attach it using a slip stitch. And it's that simple, but it's difficult to explain. So yeah, all you have to do is go around and attach the sleeve on all sides. So first, it's going to be attached to, say, the back portion, and that's what I'm attaching the sleeve to. So one side of the sleeve is going to be attached to the back portion, and then once I reach the bottom of the sleeve, then it's going to round out and begin attaching to the front side of the project. So I'm reaching the end here, and I've reached the end, so I'm going to grab the front side of the project, because I've already attached the sleeve to the back side. Now I've just got to align it. Where is it? There it is. Okay, so make sure that it's nice and aligned, and I'm going to attach the two sides together right here, eventually, like so. Okay, so now they're attached. Now I'm going to flip it over and attach the sleeve to the front part of the project now. See how it's only attached on one side? That's exactly what you want. You don't want to attach it to both sides accidentally, because then you're going to seal off that portion and you're not going to be able to put your arm through it, because it's going to be sealed off. So now you just have to go up and attach the rest of the sleeve to the rest of the project. So once you finish attaching the sleeve, it should look something like this, nice and sturdy. Now all you have to do is attach the rest of the project on the side. And you can just detach the yarn from the yarn ball and then reattach it, and then use slip stitch to attach the two sides together. And once you have completed that, then you're going to go over to the other side and do the exact same thing. You're going to attach the top portion of both the back and the front, and then you're also going to attach the sleeve, and then you're going to go down and attach the sides of the front and the back. And that's it. Once you've attached everything, then you're done with the project. Well, actually, the last real step you have to do is flip the project right side in, because right now it's inside out and all of the stitches are sticking out where you attached everything, and it doesn't look that fantastic. So in order for it to look a little bit better, it's best that you, again, turn it right side in. So after you do that, you'll notice that the sides of the project look much cleaner and much nicer, and now it's ready for you to wear. So put on your favorite pair of jeans or a cute skirt or whatever you want to wear with this handmade crochet v-neck sweater and rock it. Like I said throughout the video, I know I did an absolutely horrible job at explaining some portions of the project, such as how to attach certain things and also what shapes you need to make for, say, the back portion of the project. So I'm actually going to have a blog post dedicated to clearing some of these things up, and hopefully you find it helpful. And if you're still struggling, I do have other sweater tutorials that I believe I actually did a better job of explaining some things. So you can check those out as well, and then hopefully figure out what the heck I'm trying to explain to you. And of course, you can always rewatch, pause, replay this video as well as many times as you need. I know it may get a little bit frustrating if you don't get it at first. It did take me 4 days to make this project, so it's rather time consuming. So I understand your frustration, but I hope that you can push through and you really like the project in the end. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and also click that red subscribe button if you have not already, so I can see you next time. Bye!